back to directory search, I just think it's good to have a little bit more base knowledge sometimes.
Sure. So again, you've got the two parts here that allow you to do your searching and then your exporting up the top here. So whatever you've got selected on the screen is what gets exported. So if you do want to do, as Richard said, you want to go and look at all your unknown ones that are in here, you can go and select those, right click, or sorry, click on the three dots here and click export to Excel, and that will then export the 73 rows that you've got selected on the screen. Okay, so what we're going to now move on to is how do we get data out of the system in an itemized way. So we looked at the quick search, and this is really just to work in parallel with this. So if you don't have it, you can get a very similar feature out of what you've already got. Everyone will have access to this report that has Prism. It's been there since day one. So let's go and have a look at this report, how it works and how you get the data out. So I'm going to give you a quick tip. When you come onto reports, and this is the same for dashboards as well, I have some quick links that allow me to quickly get to these reports. So ones that I use commonly. So I commonly use the detail and call information. So when I come to my front screen, I can click on this straight away and it takes me into the report. So how do we do that? So what I'll do is if I go back to the screen here, on this screen here, on the very first screen, when you click on reports, you do have the ability to click on the little edit button in the top right. And you'll see here that I can delete my favorites, because this is what they're called favorites, or I can add new favorites to my front screen. So there's common dashboards that you're going to. It may be, you know, it's the call queues dashboard that you use in Teams, for example. You can create a quick link or a favorite. And what that then does is when you come into the dashboards, you have a quick link here that you simply click on and it will take you there. If not, you know, you can always come on the left-hand side, go to details, and then, you know, we're going to be looking at the call information report here. So what we need to do is go through what the parameters mean for this particular report. So we're going to look at the parameters over here. So as in all of our reports, we have the ability to search between a particular date. So you can tick the dates here, the from and the to. Or there is a dates button that sits underneath these the calendars, and you can click on this and you can choose a set of predefined dates. So for what I'm looking at, I'm going to look at May. So I'm going to click on my dates button and go to May, because that's what I'm looking at here. The next one here is the time zone. So what does the time zone mean? So what this does is this time shifts all your calls. So for example, if somebody in your US office or someone in your Tokyo office wants a report, what you would want to do is time shift this to be in their time zone. Because obviously if I make a call now at 10 o'clock, it's going to be 10 o'clock my time, UTC, but it won't be 10 o'clock in New York, for example. So what you would need to do is choose their time zone that they're in, and then that will then time shift it to show the correct time and not your time. So 99% of the time you probably will never need to change it, but the ability is there if you need to. So what if you want to do times that are in between a certain hour? So let's say we want to do it between working hours. So I can come in here and go between 9 and 6 o'clock. So I want all calls between these hours. Or I can exclude them. So I can say, don't give me calls that are within those hours.
I was about to say, often people actually want to look outside. What am I missing when the office isn't open?
But you can create two reports. I can click generate of the ones that are not between those hours, and then I can come in here and do the same and go, right, so what are we looking at in the difference?
In hours, out of hours.
Yep, and we're going to be looking at how many calls are we missing in store A, because you know, we're not opening till 7 o'clock,
Yeah.
for example. Okay.
Yeah.
So is it that if we open up an extra hour, that we're going to, you know, see that we're going to take a few extra sales by doing that?
Yeah.
You could choose your CDR source. So this is looking at which source that you want to look at. So again, you can come in here and choose your specific CDR source. It's up to you. If you don't set it, the same as on all of these, if you don't set any of these settings, it will default to have everything. Okay.
Everything that you have permissions to.
Yeah, everything that you have permission to. So I'm just going to reset this back to have everything in it.
And I think that's a point of note. You know, if you're an administrator, clearly you will get everything.
Yeah.
But if your profile's been set up, you might be a department head, you might only see your department. This doesn't supersede any of the other security.
No. So when, for example, and that's a very good point, if you're a lockdown account and you come into this part here, so the next part we're going to look at, when we go into the directory items, you'll only see what you have been granted to see. Okay. So how do I then use the report? So there are two clear ways of filtering out this report to show information. You can use the tree tab, and you can do a search for a particular person to look for all their calls. So I'm going to just search for Matt, and I can go and choose that person because that's who I want to go and look at. Or I can choose the whole of service management. Or I could say, right, I want the whole of service management, get Matt. But I also want to see Amy's calls as well. Okay, so you can mix and match by doing departments and users in here. But let's say you don't actually know who owns the phone. Okay, so you've been given a group of phone numbers to run a report on. So I use an example, and an NHS trust. What it is they've got 3 or 4 phone numbers that they want to run a report on. So what you can also do is click over to what we call the endpoints over here, and then you can filter on these individual columns to look for them. So it could be, you want to search for department, so you've still got the ability over here to search for a department. So if I want to see all my service management departments, I can filter, and I'll be able to see all the phones that are available in here. But the difference being now is I can choose the phones individually, okay? Rather than then having to pick a name or a department, I can actually pick the phone numbers that I want to look for.
In this scenario, because you've narrowed it down, we have to know from a directory point of view that phone is associated to service management.
Correct, yeah. So again, you can then filter on a particular phone over here. So I can say, right, this is the number I'm looking for, 2021. Okay, now you'll see then I've got nothing coming up, and I'm going, why is that? And that's because I've got the filter over here as well. So I can go, right, actually, I need to clear that filter. And now it's coming up with my phone. So I want to look.
And in this scenario, because you're now not filtering to a department, it would appear even if it was unallocated?
No, it has to be allocated to a department to be able to search for it in here. So you can then search for another number, and then you can then keep searching for all the numbers that you want to run a report on. Okay, so I'm going to keep searching. I'm going to add these in. So what I've now got is 5 numbers. It tells me at the top here I've got 5 numbers that I'm going to go and run a report on. So there are, as I said, 2 ways of doing it, and you can mix and match as well if you want to. So you can have endpoints and you can have tree items selected. Mix and matching is absolutely fine in here as well, okay? But again, like the quick search, this just allows you to quickly search for a number, put it in here, and then you can click generate at the top. And what I'm going to do is just click generate to show you what the data then looks like. So I've searched for 5 numbers here.
It's quite nice that indicator's there throughout telling you.
Yeah, so it will then show me 2304, which is one of the ones I looked for, 2021, which is the ones, and it will give me all of the calls here. All the itemized calls. It looks for incoming, internal, outgoing calls. It will show tandem calls as well, and I'll come to that in a few minutes. So once you've selected your report or the numbers that you want to run a report on, you can look at whether you want to look at cost, wholesale or retail. It will mainly be on cost. I want to look at my top 250 calls for those numbers, or just be careful that you may want to set it to all. So if you want all calls for those numbers, you must select all here, okay? And it does tell you on the report here what you've got selected. So if it says top 250 and then you're looking going, well, I've only got 250 calls on my report, it's probably because you haven't changed it to here. Now, this report is not designed to do, hundreds of thousands of pages, okay? So just remember to keep that in mind. That's why there is this top thing added on, okay? But, you can have all calls on here if you wish to. It could be as well is that they've come to you and said, right, we just want to see all of our outgoing calls for those users, okay? So in here, you can come into your direction. You can choose, I just want to see all the outgoing calls. And I can click generate them, and it will then just show me all my outgoing calls here for those phone numbers that I've selected. And then if I wish to, I can then export it as a PDF. I can put it as an Excel file from here. Even if you want to, you can create it straight as a Word document. Most commonly, yes, PDF is the one that you would send then to the end user. So again, you can filter on direction. If you don't select one, it will assume you want all 4 directions. Outcomes.
What would be a sort of real life example where you might want directions?
So it could be that, literally they want to see all that,
costed calls, maybe, so outgoing.
Yeah, so they want to see their top calls. So when you go to the sort by at the bottom here, you could have a sort it on the cost. Okay, so I want to look at my most expensive, my longest outgoing calls, etc. in here. So, when you get to the sorting at the bottom, that then can become an important part. So give me my top 100 most expensive calls for those those numbers that I've selected. Okay. So that's the direction. Outcome. So maybe you only want to see connected calls or not connected calls. Again, you can select these. Again, if you don't select it, it will assume you want all of them. Then we come into these initiating and terminating reasons. Now, going back to the Get Started page, there is actually a full document that explains what an initiating reason and what a terminating reason is, okay? So there's a nice diagrams explaining what they are. So with the initiating and terminating reasons here, an initiating reason is why did it come to that phone, okay? So it's an inquiry. So somebody did an inquiry to that phone and then they spoke to them and then it was transferred, okay? So that's why it left the phone. So the initiating reason is why it came. The terminating reason is why it left the phone. Normal just means it was ringing or the person picked up the phone or the person hung up the phone here. So you can do a filter on these. Again, it's best to go and look at the document, explains them more in here if you're not quite sure what they mean. We have the ability to also search for a charged party. Now, what is a charged party? A lot of you may have seen this in Prism before, and maybe you're asking yourself, well, what is it? So a charged party is for who do you want to, in this report, who do you want to pay for a particular call? Okay, so let's say I put my phone on divert to my mobile, okay, and then Richard rings my desk phone, so he rings my 4-digit extension, dials 2021, and then it rings my mobile. Now on your report, it may show that Richard rang my mobile, and Richard's now getting the charge for that call. Well, Richard didn't know that he was ringing a mobile.
It actually happened the other day.
Yeah, Richard dialed 2021. So why is it coming up on his bill when he gets it? He goes, well, I didn't ring that to mobile. I didn't dial that. I dialed 2021. So what you can do is you can turn on this charge party to say, right, we want them to charge that call to the person who generated the cost. So it was me, I generated it. I know I forwarded my mobile. So what this does is just essentially it assigns the calls correctly to the person who generated the costed part. So if you're really interested in cost, that's what the charge party does. Now, to help you understand this, right, there are some additional columns you can add to this report, okay? And these are really useful columns that you can add into this report. So we've got the transfer columns. So if I'm doing, you know, a direction of inbound, for example, and I want to see who all these calls are transferred to or transferred from, I can add the additional columns, the transfer columns, and click generate. And it will now show me 2 extra columns on the right-hand side to say, right, that call was not picked up. It was redirected and was redirected to 8007. This one was picked up and transferred to 2249. This one was, you know, picked up and there. This one was transferred from 2021 into that phone number here. So 2 additional columns on the same report just by simply coming in and enabling these additional columns.
Of course, now you can export this into a usable format.
Yep. And provide it to them, because maybe that's the question is, you know, we just want to see what's going on with this phone.
Yeah.
So like the quick search, you've got the ability to come into your directory items, search for phone number, assuming it's in the directory, add on your extra column with your transfer ones, run it, PDF it, send it to the end user to answer their question. It could be you want the charge column. So this is where this charge party is important. And what it does is it then explains who should pay for that call. So it gives context around who should be paying for that call. So it could be that, you know, the person who made the call here, actually that number, the person who's paying for it, is different to the person who actually made the call. Okay. We probably don't have one in here as an example, but here. This one here, that you can see, oh no, that was a call to Barry. Anyway, that's how it would work. You'd see that the calling digits would be different to the charged ones. This is how you can show who paid for the call. And it may be if you're doing inbound stats, so maybe, you know, one of the contact center agents wanted all of their calls for that particular day. You can add in the response time columns as well. So these give more context around how quickly you are answering the calls, okay? So in here, you'll get the additional response times in addition to the ring time as well. So again, one report, but you can actually add or remove columns depending on what the users want.
And again, to the point, you could remove some of these other columns if you didn't want it to be a big, long...
The columns are fixed here.
At the start, but I mean, all these extra ones you're adding, you can be more. You might want to add a lot to begin with, and then you can be quite specific and go, right, that's the one that's got the information I need in, because you're just bringing it up on screen.
Correct.
Once you've got it to then you can start taking things away again. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, you can then sort by what's my, you know, I want to send it to them with the longest talk time, with the, you know, with who it was transferred to, with transferred from. So you've got all the abilities to sort them on these as well.
And that's fantastic, because let's be honest, when people come to you asking for this type of report, they probably got a purpose in mind.
Yeah.
And it likely is it's in that list of purposes.
Yeah, exactly. And it could be then as well, you know, if it's more difficult for them, just, you know, you can export as an Excel.
Yeah.
They can potentially go and resort it themselves anyway.
I mean, it depends who it's going to, right?
Correct.
If it's, some managers might want a PDF.
Yeah.
But again, if it's going to a data team so they can do deeper analysis, maybe they want to pull it into Power BI. Maybe, you know, Excel's the way.
Yeah, definitely.